Card dorks and slabheads, welcome to another edition of the R-Rated podcast where your host Ryan is not going to be talking a lot. This is just a recording of the Collectors Universe PSA conference call where CEO Joe Orlando took many questions on the trimmed slab scandal. About 20 minutes of questions, many regarding computerized grading, PWCC, potential loss of business. Highlights for me included, briefly, the Joe Orlando saying that Brent Mastro of PWCC is not a large customer of theirs, and they have no plans for computerized grading in the future. Otherwise, enjoy. Hope you're enjoying your end of your summer, wherever you are, and we'll see you guys some other time, some other place.
Thank you.
I'll take our next question from Paul Saperstein at First New York. Please go ahead.
Hi, guys. Thank you very much for the call and the question. Just first of all, a couple of questions. A follow-up on the capacity increase you just mentioned. Can you just give a little more color as to number of heads or other metrics of, like, you know, what type of percentage increase you are expecting this year and in the midterm to your grading capacity? And I think you might be also implementing some sort of technology around improving and enhancing the authentication and grading process, and it kind of goes back to the gross margin question, but can you kind of just talk about how margins evolve relative to the capacity increase, both technology and or headcount? That's question one. Other two questions are just kind of around the revenue concentration and all the investigations that are going on with PWCC. If you kind of just point to, you know, potential risks associated with the investigation and any other type of commentary you have around that, and are there any implications to warranty reserves on the balance sheet? Thank you.
Gotcha. So I'll take a stab at question one. I think, quite frankly, and I'll let Joe Wallace chime in here as well, I think it's probably a little too early to predict what impact some of our upcoming operational projects will have long-term on margins. This is sort of, we're at the beginning stages of trying to figure out if we can incorporate certain kinds of technology at certain stages in the grading process. And I guess figuring out how successful we are, I guess, is to be determined. So it's a little early for us to, I think, speculate as to exactly how successful we will be there. Certainly, there's room for improvement. We completely believe that, and when we look at our, you know, we're moving so many millions of units through the facility every year. Any little gain you can make in terms of efficiency will really help a company, especially one of our size. We're a relatively small company overall, even though we are processing millions of units a year. So there's no doubt in our minds that there are gains to be made, but at this stage, I think it would be improper for me or Joe or anybody here to guess exactly how much that would impact our company. I will say this, over the past year or so, what we have done is gotten rid of the silo or the silos that we had inside of our organization where, for example, PCGS had their own operation and PCGS had a separate operation. So this includes everything from receivers to sealers and so forth. And what we've done over the past year is blended the operation together, with the exception of grading, of course, like the actual expertizing. So now we can move, we're a lot more flexible. If one part of the business gets hot, whether that's, you know, cards happens to be very hot right now, at certain times of the year, as Joe mentioned, there's a seasonality. Sometimes modern bulk and coins is very, very busy. We can move those people to one side or the other based on the demand. So we believe we are getting some benefit there, but in terms of, you know, looking forward, I think it's a little premature to predict a percentage sort of benefit. As far as the other question that you had in regards to this investigation of the auctioneer in our industry, I can answer it very short and sweet. We don't believe that there is anything of a material nature for our company to be concerned with. Of course, any negative publicity that our industries receive or have to deal with is, not something that we like to see, but it's sort of a part of, I'm sure, every industry that there's going to be a negative news from time to time. But I think if you look at the last 4 months or so, which is about at the time that this sort of news story broke on this company, I mean, our receiving has actually gone up. The prices for PSA certified items remains at, terrific, and the demand is there. So we don't anticipate anything of any meaning as a result of this.
Got it. I'm just reading through the 10K and understanding the warranty and provisioning process. Is there any type of risk associated with historical grading and kind of, I guess, the kind of the questionable practices that the FBI is looking at?
Questionable practices as it relates to outside submitters?
Well, I mean, when you read through kind of the blogs of what some collectors are speculating, and I'm not a collector by any means, I'm just kind of reading kind of all the news involved. There's a question of whether or not, or basically who's kind of breaking into the boxes, changing or upgrading the cards, kind of for a better grade, and then resubmitting, and potentially getting a higher grade. And I think it's associated with higher valued cards to a certain extent. So I'm just wondering whether or not the warranty associated with that could potentially be something where your auditors are kind of requiring higher provisioning.
To answer the question, this is what I would say is that, with PCGS, of course, I mentioned earlier, they've been around for 33 years, with PSA 28 years now, and we've graded, of course, over 75 million combined items. There is nothing, what I would describe as unique to this investigation of this auctioneer. This is the same exact battle that we deal with every day. So there's, I guess the way I would characterize this is none of this is really new news. It's not news to us. It's not news to the industry that these types of things go on. So there's nothing really out of the ordinary from that perspective about the investigation versus any other year in our history. So again, Joe Wallace is welcome to chime in here if he has something to add, but we don't view this as a special sort of warranty issue versus any other day in the lives of Collectors Universe.
Great, that's great to hear. So just wrap it up. So when you talk about revenue concentration, I think it's 11% of sales. Is PWCC one of the top 5 customers in that number? And is their business turning down because of this investigation?
Well, they're certainly not one of the larger customers in that top 5 customer base. That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
I'll take our next question from Tyler Johnson as a private investor. Please go ahead.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call. My question is in regards to, are you aware that 2 former PSA employees have indicated fraud that is occurring through your company regarding the trimmed cards that have been rated higher than they should be?
I couldn't understand the question. Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, you broke up there for a moment. We couldn't understand the question.
Yeah. My question is about the 2 former PSA employees that were implicated in the investigation for the trimmed cards that are graded higher than they should be. Are you aware of that?
I'm not aware of anything you're talking about here.
So you're not aware of the PSA employees that have been implicated in the investigation, the trimmed cards, that Lou Garrett card you guys mentioned before? You're not aware of any of that information?
We would ask the moderator to please move on from this caller. Thank you.
I'll take our next question from Ken Sichowski as a private investor, please go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking the question. Maybe I'll just try it another way. I was just wondering if you could disclose what percentage of your card business is sports card related, just because it seems like a lot of the fraud was concentrated there. So if people are trying to handicap what the risk is around around grading in the sports card area, I think that would be helpful for investors.
Well, if you listen to our call, we disclosed in every detail the exact percentage of our last fiscal year between coins and cards and all of our divisions. So I think we covered all of that. So if you have another question, we're happy to answer it.
Well, I was thinking, because you guys do non-sports related cards as well, so presumably, so if a collector is focusing on cards, it's going to be, there's obviously like Pokemon and other stuff, and then you have sports cards. So I was just wondering, within the 90% of trading cards and autographs that's card related, how much is sports cards specifically? We don't break it out by percentage of genre, if that's what you're getting at, and I'm sorry I misunderstood your question from before. But we do grade a tremendous amount of non-sports cards as well. Over the past 12 months, we have graded several 100,000 Pokemon, Magic the Gathering, and those sorts of things. And in PSA last year, we in total, and most of this is cards. Some of it is autographs, some of it is tickets, original photos, and other things that we provide services for. We processed in the neighborhood of 2.5 million items. I would say several 100,000 of that was of the non-sports variety, but we don't literally break it out by genre in our detail here. Okay, that's helpful. And then just another follow-up. I guess when you think about this whole trimming scandal, I mean, what do you think is missing in your grading and authentication process that prevented the graders from actually identifying these trimmed cards? And I guess what, if anything, can you do to address the loopholes that certain collectors are taking advantage of today? Well, we don't view this as being any loophole on our end, and we think that in the overall scheme of our business that some of this has been blown way out of proportion. But we are very confident in the services that we provide and very confident in the grading staff that we have, and so is the public. As I mentioned, over the past several months, our business, if anything, has increased. So it kind of tells you what the overall marketplace thinks of our grading services and the quality of our product. Right, okay. And then if I could just sneak one last one in here. You guys continue to generate a lot of cash flow. So, if you look at the increase in cash over the last 2 quarters, it's about $3 million, over $3 million in each of the last 2 quarters. And, it's obviously been pretty strong. So can you talk about what your capital allocation plans are for the company going forward? And if you're planning on using some of that cash to invest internationally, what are some of the milestones that you're trying to hit, say, over the next, 3 to 5 years? Well, we don't have, I wouldn't say that we have any defined milestones as it relates to cash, and I think our capital, allocation has been pretty consistent, over the last few years. We are looking, since we did have a very positive year in terms of cash generation, and we have a very strong cash position right now, we are looking at some new verticals. We are looking at expanding some of our services internally, some of our core businesses, and we're looking very hard at that over the next fiscal year. And depending on where we decide to spend the money, will also dictate how we view our current dividend and the level that it sits at. But we are in the process of determining what to do with some of the cash, if indeed we determine that it's excess. But we don't have a defined number that we say, well, if it's under this or over this, we can or cannot do anything. So we're taking a good hard look at that. We think it's time to start thinking about
where Collectors Universe, or what it looks like, 5, 8, 10 years down the road. So it's something it's very, very fresh on our minds.
Right, okay. And then if I could just sneak one last one in here. Within the coin segment, I mean, you guys had some nice unit growth in the quarter. It was actually up, 9%, versus, negative for the prior 6 quarters. So if I was wondering if you just talk about, where you see that unit growth going over the next, call it 3 to 5 years, because, if you just look over the last 10 years or so, you guys have had decent unit growth over time. So just wondering if that's, sustainable over the medium to long term.
It is very hard to predict, unit growth over a 3 to 5 year period. But what I can say is this, that the opportunity in the U.S. is on modern coins, because that's where literally the volume is. And so what you've seen over the past couple of quarters, certainly in fiscal 19 versus fiscal 18, is some improvement in that area. So when you look at PCGS and their performance in Q3 and Q4, a lot of that success was an improvement in the modern bulk coin area. So that when it comes to modern bulk coins, we have some control over the packaging and presentation of those coins. So the more creative we can get, the more our product appeals to the ultimate consumer, the better we can do. We are also, on some level, at the mercy of what the mint produces, and if they produce a coin that resonates with collectors, we have a better opportunity to capitalize on that. From an international perspective, if you remove a couple of quarters, I guess it would have been Q1 of fiscal 18, I believe, and Q2 of fiscal 17. We had very big surges in international coin growth because of the banking channel revenue that we've discussed in the past, where they're more likened to isolated projects than a sustainable sort of business. So we had these big surges of revenue in those 2 quarters. But the base business seems to be gaining more traction, and that's more of the traditional collecting community versus banking channel revenue. So the real opportunity domestically for coins is in modern. If people have vintage coins to grade, we will receive them. It's much like on the PSA side of our business. If somebody has a high-end Babe Ruth item, whether it's an autograph, a card, something like that, at this point, because of our brand strength, we don't have to go out and ask for those types of submissions. They sort of naturally come to us, but you do have to be very competitive on modern, and modern is where the volume is. So we're making a concerted effort on the coin side to build that domestic modern business as best we can. And then on the international side, as Joe Wallace commented on earlier, while we don't anticipate any banking channel revenue anytime soon, we are trying to build the base business up as much as we can.
Okay, great. All right, thanks a lot for taking the questions, and congrats on the quarter.
Thank you.
Once again, if you'd like to ask a question, please press star 1. We'll now take our last question from Bobby Nuredini from BBN Management. Please go ahead.
Hey guys, thanks for taking the question. Real quick about this PWCC and trimming scandal. It wasn't clear to me based on the answers to earlier questions. Have you guys noticed a drop off in business from that auction house in particular?
How do we know that there's a? I'm not following. How do we know that there's a drop off from that auction house? That is a submitter?
No. I don't think you heard me properly. Has there been a drop off in business from PWCC since end of May, beginning of June?
We could certainly look at the records, but I would say that certainly over the last couple of months, there has been, I would say, virtually no business, and I'll leave it at that.
Got it. So I think because they were. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Let me just go ahead and try and close this issue. I mean, as Joe has said earlier, the level of submissions that we continue to see at the PSA cards business is continues to be very, very on. In fact, our backlog is actually higher now than it was back in June. In terms of our warranty, we take a very conservative view in terms of the warranty and what our expectation is in terms of our balance sheet. So I think, this whole trimming issue that's, we've spent a lot of time talking about today is really something that we don't consider material to our business. And we'd probably just like to leave it at that in terms of any additional questions on the subject.
Okay, well, let me kind of dance around a little bit. If the card grading business continues to grow, and then one of these formerly large customers has basically gone to zero revenue, who's picking that up? Is it individual collectors or other dealers? I mean, where's the growth coming from when you have this kind of vacuum created by one of your large customers?
Well, I think that's maybe the issue is that there's an idea, I guess, at least coming from your question, that in some ways that whether it's the PWCC company that you're referring to or really any other company, that they make up such a large percentage of submissions that we should be concerned. One thing that is very interesting about the PSA business, and it's a little bit different than the PCGS business in this way, is that the submissions are spread out quite a bit. We do have some larger customers. I don't think I would define PWCC as being, I mean, Joe has already commented on it earlier in the call. They don't fit in to that what we would consider at Collectors Universe a large customer anyway. But so we don't anticipate any impact whatsoever from PWCC, whether no matter what happens to them as part of this investigation. We're not concerned about it, and like Joe said, our current backlog is at record levels and continues to be at record levels regardless of PWCC's personal business. So our submissions are spread out in such a way that we are not dependent on one submitter or another for the PSA business to grow in the future, which I think is what you were getting to. Are we concerned about our ability to grow minus a customer or two or three? And the answer is no.
Got it. Pardon me. And I don't want to bother you guys with this too much, but it seems like some kind of change needs to happen in regards to ensuring that trim cards don't get authenticated. I think you touched on it a little bit earlier in terms of employing some new technologies. Can you talk a little bit about, I mean, one of the things that's kind of being discussed on hobby message boards is computerized grading and how, humans are inherently flawed in that sense. Like it's hard to maybe pick up on some of the minutia. Especially, according to my calculations, the card graders get about 75 seconds to grade each card, right? So, and I might be wrong with that. It's just a rough calculation. What kind of technologies are you looking at going forward in terms of, and are you, eventually going to try to take this out of human hands and computerize the card grading specifically?
We have no plans on taking grading out of human hands.
Got it. Okay. All right. Thanks for your time, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
There appears no further questions at this time. I'd like to turn the conference back to the presenters. Please go ahead.
We would like to thank everyone for joining us today for the call and look forward to speaking with you in next quarter.
Thank you.
Thank you.